I finally finished reading Muv-Luv Alternative, and it only took me, what, 3 years? Now, in all fairness, I read probably the last 2/3 of it in about a 6-month span, and still, I read the whole thing in Japanese, so I'm sure that if I read this in English, I would have finished it a lot sooner and probably enjoyed it slightly more. But yeah, 3 years from start to finish, and if you go back to when I started reading Muv-Luv Extra, that would have been 5 years ago. So this whole thing has been a really long ride, and if I spend 1 second on this longer than I really have to, I think I might go insane. So let's just get right into it. First, I want to talk a little bit about how I ended up choosing Muv-Luv, and then how I set it up to read on my computer. Alright, so I'm looking through a whole bunch of visual novel rating websites because I want to find out what are the top visual novels out there, and Muv-Luv Alternative consistently rated near the top. Now, there were some other stories there that I was also interested in, however, many of them already had anime adaptations, some of which I've actually seen. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to pick any one of these stories, I may as well pick the one that I can't get in anime format. And yes, next year there is going to be a Muv-Luv Alternative anime, but back then, I didn't think there was going to be one. There was certainly no prospect of one at that time, so I started reading Muv-Luv Extra and then Muv-Luv Unlimited to get the backstory on Muv-Luv Alternative, and then finally Muv-Luv Alternative 3 years ago. The way I set these up on my computer was actually through used discs that I got through some cheap used anime goods stores in Utsunomiya and Akihabara. This one is the CD box set for Muv-Luv Extra and Muv-Luv Unlimited, which came together, and then we moved up to DVD technology for Muv-Luv Alternative. In addition to these two programs, I would install a text extraction program to copy the Japanese text out of these programs, and then a dictionary program that would let me hover over some of the Japanese words in order to get a basic English translation. That was often good enough, but never really perfect. Now, I really tried to read and understand every single word because this was part of my Japanese practice. However, I gave myself two big exceptions. First of all, the sex scenes were always a little weird. They had some really weird terminology and language that they don't really teach you in school, so I kind of glossed over those. And also the military talk got really complicated in both Unlimited and Alternative, so I gave myself a pass to just gloss over that terminology as well. Alright, so now let's get into the arc-by-arc analysis. Muv-Luv Alternative gets off to a strong start in actually much the same way that Muv-Luv Unlimited got off to a good start. Now, for all the flack that Muv-Luv Unlimited gets, at least the very beginning and the very end were actually really well done. There's just a lot of garbage in the middle. But think about this one more time. You know, in Muv-Luv Extra, Takeru's living in this happy-go-lucky school life world, and then all of a sudden, everything around him is destroyed. He gets arrested, he gets interrogated, he has no idea what's going on, and that start is really exciting. In Muv-Luv Alternative, you're thinking one more time, is he going to go through that all over again? At the very beginning, his room actually looks exactly the way it does in Muv-Luv Extra, and you're thinking perhaps he might be saved. But no, once again, he ends up in that beta-ridden world, and he has to figure out how to get out of it. Now, at least this time around, he is a much more capable person. All of his training in the previous Unlimited world is still intact. He's physically and mentally strong, and perhaps more importantly than anything else, he has a sense of urgency. He's constantly looking for a way to break off from those previous Unlimited arcs, and he's trying to save 1 day, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 second. He's constantly trying to change things, and that at least is slightly exciting, even though you're reading through a lot of the same sort of stale material from Muv-Luv Unlimited. Also, this time around, you're starting to get some sense that Takeru might be able to do some interdimensional travel back to his original Muv-Luv Extra world. Maybe he'll be able to meet Sumika again, maybe he'll meet Yuko-sensei again, and these scenes are sort of few and far between, and they're very short, but at least that gives you some excitement in otherwise stale material. So the very first few arcs, they're kind of boring because there is a lot of carryover material, but at the same time, a few things here and there do make them at least slightly readable. We finally split off from the world of Muv-Luv Unlimited when Takeru decides he's not going to try to talk that old lady out of leaving her home before the volcano erupts, but instead just force her out. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, finally we get some new material, and also we get to skip that really boring arc from Muv-Luv Unlimited. But instead we get a new boring arc in the coup d'etat arc. And this time around, I guess the only good parts are that we get introduced to Yuki, and Maya is also pretty cool in this arc, but otherwise, thematically, it's really boring. You're forced to have a lot of conversations with people you don't care about. And even your core party, you're forced to talk to each one of them one by one in succession. It's really long and drawn out. It's also really abruptly sort of resolved, and that's kind of surprising given all the build-up. But all things considered, it's really boring. This is the part that I was stuck on for like a year and a half because I struggled to summon the will to push through it. But finally I was able to, and thankfully after this, the PTSD arc onwards are much better. Now everyone's graduated from trainee status and Takeru's new operating system is being scheduled for wide-scale deployment when all of a sudden Beta attacks and we get our first major death. Now here, many of you might consider this to be a huge turning point where it goes from just a normal story to perhaps something really epic. But I disagree. At this point, I still don't think it was really good writing. The whole death seemed really fabricated, especially the timing of it, where 1 second Takeru is talking to her and the next moment he turns around and Beta's standing right there. Didn't really like that. So after this, Takeru just flips out and runs away to the original world. And here is where I think things really take a turn for the better and things really get interesting. Because at this point, you figure, okay, Takeru has to be pushed back to the Beta world for some reason or another. But under what circumstances and why, I would have had no idea. So for him to learn about his special status and for one incident after the next to really occur in this original world, for him to be forced into going back to confront Beta in the Beta world, I think that's really interesting and that's where the story really gets good and takes off. When Takeru finally gets back to the alternative world, he almost immediately runs into Sumika. And we've been waiting for this for a really long time because as far as we knew, Sumika didn't even appear in Unlimited. And in fact, we're sort of tricked into thinking that perhaps Yashiro is that world's version of Sumika. Well, earlier in Alternative, it's revealed that Yashiro and Sumika are in fact two completely different people, but we still don't even know if Sumika actually exists in this world. Now we actually finally have this confirmed, and it's now Takeru's job to help her revert to her original personality from the sort of killing machine that she's become. Now here we get a lot of good drama, but some bad drama to go along with it. And what I mean by that is this whole mini arc where Sumika has to reject Takeru and his sort of Santa Bunny because she feels like she's been violated by Beta. And you get all these not safe for work scenes of that actually happening. I did not need any of that. I think the story would have been just fine without that. Whatever. You know, for the most part, the drama is still good though. And yeah, let's just get into these next series of battles. Takeru now gets assigned to the Valkyrie squad, which consists of his trainee squad, plus at least one character, maybe two, I can't quite remember, from Muv-Luv Extra, and then there are a whole bunch of characters from earlier works in the same creative universe, such as Kimi ga Nozumo Eien. Some of the characters might even be completely new, I'm not really sure, since I haven't seen Kimi ga Nozumo Eien in a very long time, and I can't quite remember what the characters look like. But in any case, this is a whole bunch of new characters you're expected to care about almost immediately, and that was way too much for me. And in any case, you do have to go through a lot of character development and bonding time with them, which just prolongs this novel even more. Didn't care for all that, but in any case, this is the group that you're going into battle with. Finally, we get to a real battle in Sadogashima, and we're finally able to see if Takeru and Sumika are able to deliver in battle against Beta. Now, I'd say all things considered, this is the best battle of the story. You know, things aren't necessarily going to go smoothly or according to plan, but somehow or another, the heroes are able to pull things off, even though it comes with severe losses. And this sets the tone for the upcoming battles as well. After what feels like an eternity after the Sadogashima battle, we finally get to the Yokohama base battle. And I still can't believe that these two battles are part of the same chapter when there is so much reading between the two of them. It really stretches things out and it was really annoying to get through. But anyway, the Yokohama base battle is really interesting for two reasons. First of all, it's really unexpected, and second of all, you learn a lot about how Beta operates. Now, what I didn't like about this battle is, once again, the timing felt really fabricated in some ways. It kind of hurts the story when certain things just happen at the last second that throw everyone's plans off. But whatever, overall, this is a good battle, but the timing just seemed a little bit fabricated. In a really welcome turn of events, the story transitions almost immediately into the final battle, and this is accompanied with some really cool insert songs and animations, so everything at this point is getting you really pumped up for that grand finale. Now, the story sets you up for death by having killed off so many characters until now. It's just that the order in which they start killing off some of these major characters now is kind of predictable, and I really didn't like that predictability aspect of it, even though I accepted that these deaths would happen. Then we get up to the final boss, and we get what I wouldn't go so far as to call an information dump, more of a desirable information exchange, because this is all information that you want to know, even though it does go on kind of long. Anyway, it did confirm one of my theories about why Beta was seemingly stupid, even though they were capable of interstellar travel. So anyway, you have that conversation with the final boss, things break down, and eventually you have to actually fight back. The good guys win despite the odds, and that's the end of Beta on Earth, at least for now. Once you're back at the Yokohama base, you're hit with what I actually would call an information dump, since some of that information was surely available beforehand, but instead they chose to throw it all in your face at the same time at the very end. This was a little bit annoying, but at the same time it was satisfying to hear all those explanations. So now you have a few final conversations and then you head back to your original beta-free Muv-Luv Extra type world. This final world is definitely kind of cheesy, but at the same time, it's definitely fitting too. I mean, it is very much in tune with the atmosphere of Muv-Luv Extra, and it is very rewarding after everything you've been through in Unlimited and Alternative. So overall, I would say I am definitely satisfied with the ending. To sum up what I liked about Muv-Luv Alternative, first of all, the plot is really good after the coup d'etat arc, even if it is kind of stretched out. Secondly, there are some really minor details from the first half of the story that seem kind of trivial or forgettable, or even downright stupid at that time, but in the second half of the story, those details all come together in a way that's just downright brilliant. And finally, as with any good story, there are some very good characters. In Alternative specifically, I really liked Yuko-sensei, Marimo-sensei, Meiya, and Sumika. Now here's what I didn't like about the story. First of all, it took way too long. It took me 3 years from start to finish, and even once I got up to the parts that I liked, it still took me half a year. I'm sure I still would have been annoyed even if I'd read it in English. Second of all, I didn't like that some of the characters were kind of underdeveloped. A lot of the Valkyries were thrown at you all at once, and even some of the main cast of characters like Mikoto, Tama, Insho, Ayase, they didn't get much focus in Muv-Luv Alternative, even if they had gotten a lot of development in the previous chapters. Finally, thematically, it was kind of boring at times, and I didn't like a lot of the military talk. I think that was kind of boring. A lot of the sex scenes were kind of boring, but then again, every single visual novel has sex scenes that I don't like, so that's kind of par for the course, I guess. So overall, I think this was a very good story, had some extremely brilliant moments, but it's certainly far from perfect, so I would give it a final grade of a double plus.